Human beings have been evolving for 6 million years, but we're still not perfect. Turns out that our bodies have a bunch of design flaws. First of all, human eyes have tiny blind spots, never mind the philosophical ones. Such a spot is about the size of a pinhead. It's located at the point where the optic nerve passes through the surface of the retina at the back of the eye. Your optic nerves connect your eyes to the brain. They carry images for your brain to process. This is how you see. In the spot where these nerves leave your eye, though, there's a lack of something called photoreceptors. These receptors detect light and are the reason you can see. Without them, your eyes wouldn't be able to send any signals to your brain to describe what you're looking at. But because there are no photoreceptors there, you've got a tiny blind spot in each of your eyes. If people were designed perfectly without this flaw, they'd have eyes just like octopuses. It may sound weird, but the eyes of these creatures are eerily similar to humans. But their optic nerves run behind the retina. This means that the nerves don't have to leave the eye at any point, so there's no gap that causes the blind spot in human eyes. What else? Around 65 million Americans complained about having issues with their back, and this is because of evolution. Just like dogs, humans used to walk on all fours. When people were walking on their hands and knees, the curve of their spine was pretty much perfect, and all their organs felt comfortable. Because of this, there was never any pressure on their backs. Well, we evolved to start walking on two legs to save energy. The search for food took longer and longer, and when walking on two legs, people saved 25% of energy. But this was bad news for people's backs. Because this way, their spines were basically forced to turn into a column to support all the weight and make space for other organs. But if your spine was completely straight, you wouldn't be able to walk on two legs. So it evolved to become curved. But this puts a big amount of pressure on your lower back. So basically, to get rid of our pesky back problems, you should start walking on all fours again. That'll work. Make no bones about it, people have too many bones in their feet. We have all these bones because our ape-like ancestors needed them to grab onto tree branches. Now people aren't swinging from trees anymore, but we still have all those bones, which makes us prone to damaging them, and this can be extremely uncomfortable. Think about how many times you've stubbed your toes. If we were designed perfectly, our feet would look like those of an ostrich. These birds have way fewer bones, and the parts that look like knees turned backwards are actually their ankle joints. This makes ostriches less prone to injuries and also helps them run fast. Wow, if people were designed this way, it would make the Olympics way more interesting. I'd sure watch. Now, chew on this one. Human teeth are also far from perfect. People spend so much money on preserving them. At the same time, no other animal has to visit a dentist as we do. Also, once our teeth are permanently damaged or fall out, we can't grow new ones. Sharks are the opposite. They have an endless supply of teeth. In some shark species, a new set of teeth develops every 2 weeks. Kangaroos also have way better teeth than people do. If we were designed perfectly, we'd probably have the same teeth as our bouncing buddies. Once their teeth wear down, they fall out, and their rear teeth migrate forward. That's not the only issue we have with our teeth. Our mouths are way too crowded. Hey, I normally have a foot in mine. In the process of evolution, the human brain grew dramatically, and our jaws had to become wider and shorter to make room for it. But this left almost no room for our wisdom teeth. In the past, wisdom teeth were helpful when people needed to break down food, but as we learned to cook and process food, these teeth weren't needed anymore. So, in short, people should just get rid of them completely. And this may actually be happening. Around 25% of people, mostly Eskimos, are now born without some or all of their 4 wisdom teeth. Now, it happens that our knees are quite impractical too. It's the most complex joint in the body. It's sandwiched between 2 massive levers, which is already pretty risky. The knee only moves forward or backward, which doesn't make it a very secure construction. That's why there's a bunch of rules in many kinds of sports, like soccer or rugby, that forbid hitting an opponent's knee from the side. To make people better suited to their new sporty lifestyle, the hinge-like mechanism of the knee could be replaced with a ball and socket. This would be like the structure you have in your shoulders and hips. Friends, Romans, countrymen, waggle your ears. Yep, like dogs and cats, some humans can waggle their ears. These lucky ones can move their ears independently thanks to special muscles called extrinsic ear muscles, but those serve literally no purpose, apart from providing a cool party trick. Speaking of design flaws, human voice boxes are in the completely wrong place. Your windpipe, thanks to which you can breathe, and your food pipe, which is, you guessed it, where the food goes, open into the same space. This space extends from your nose and mouth down to your voice box. You have a little leaf-shaped flap that covers the opening to your voice box whenever you swallow. It prevents food from going into your windpipe. But this mechanism isn't always fast enough. If you're talking while eating, it's incredibly easy for the food to slip down and accidentally go into your airway, and you definitely don't want that. The whale's voice box is designed much more wisely. It's located in its blowhole, away from its mouth. If people could move their voice box into their nose, they would have 2 separate tubes, and there would be no risk of choking. But there would be a downside. We wouldn't be able to talk. But we could communicate through singing instead, like our whale friends. We'd be able to do this by producing vibrations in our noses.
Kinda like this. Don't I sound better? Hey, leave me a comment below.
You like ribs? I love them. But we're not talking about those kind of ribs. Some of us humans have an extra 13th set of ribs. Between 1 and 3% of the world's population have these ribs, called cervical, and they serve absolutely no purpose. Some people have just one of such ribs on the left side or the right side of their body, and others have cervical ribs on both sides. Now, you don't really need your appendix. It may contain some useful bacteria to help when you have stomach issues, but apart from that, it's not really necessary. The worst thing is that the appendix can get easily inflamed. The appendix was originally designed to help people digest cellulose, which is found in most green plants. This was back when people's diet mainly consisted of plants and almost no animal food. So, I say, let's get rid of it. Moving on. Blood is delivered from your heart to all the tissues of your body through thin pipes called arteries. The blood flows into each of your arms and legs through one large artery. For your arms, this artery is located at the biceps, and for your legs, it's in the front of the thigh. But your back needs blood too. And still, instead of having a large artery at the back of your body, you have smaller ones branching out and bundling around your bones and nerves. This is really impractical and makes people pretty susceptible to glitches, which is why you often get numb arms or legs. Bummer. How about something humorous? Take a look at your elbow. There, a branch of the artery meets up with something called the ulnar nerve. Thanks to this, you can move your pinky fingers. This is also why, when you bang your funny or humorous bone, your arm goes all numb and tingly. Ow. To fix this, we really need one more large artery in the back of our body near the shoulder blades. This extra pipe would provide the blood with a more direct route. This would also stop your arms and legs from going numb when you bump them in the wrong place. Finally, there's this tail. People still have a tailbone, even though there's no tail in sight. For our ape-like ancestors, the tail was incredibly helpful. They used it to balance themselves while jumping from one high branch to another. Now that we live in actual houses, most of us don't swing through trees anymore. The tailbone, whose official name is the coccyx, is easily fractured, so currently it's just a design flaw. Researchers also claim that removing it would improve posture issues too. Now, if you don't want to sneeze, press the skin on the bridge of your nose with your fingers. When you do it, your brain receives an alarm signal. Very quickly, it puts the brakes on all other processes, including the sneezing reflex. By the way, the longest sneezing fit was recorded in 1981. Sorry. It lasted for 976 days. During this time, a woman from the UK sneezed more than 1 million times. The part of your brain that's responsible for vision is in the back of your head. Interestingly, the right side of your brain controls the vision on the left side and vice versa. If you're in some loud place, for example in a club or at a concert, close your ears to better hear your friends. Push the tragus, the pointed skin-covered cartilage in front of the ear canal, into your ear. Then turn this ear toward your friend. If you feel anxious, press your fingers into a fist with your thumb sticking out and slowly blow on this finger. If you can't stop hiccups, put an ice cube on your tongue, or you can close your ears with your palms and drink a glass of water through a straw in one breath. Pulling the tip of your tongue or raising your arms toward the ceiling can also be helpful. On average, when a person snores, the sound doesn't get louder than 60 decibels. That's as loud as a regular conversation. But sometimes the noise levels can reach 80 decibels. That's as loud as a working food blender. If you want to wake up faster, hold your breath for some time. When you do it, your heart starts beating more rapidly, and your body turns on the active mode. But don't overdo it. If you wake up too abruptly, you'll put unnecessary stress on your heart. If you feel moody, hold a pencil between your teeth. The muscles involved in smiling will get down to work. This will send special impulses to your brain, and it'll start producing endorphins. In no time, your smile will become much more sincere. Right-handed people tend to chew most of their food on the right side of their mouths, and those who are left-handed use their left side more. The smell of rosemary can help you activate your super memory. Whenever you need to learn something by heart, do it while lying down in bed with a sprig of rosemary nearby. It'll help you memorize the info more effectively and faster. If your leg has fallen asleep, shake your head. In about a minute, you'll realize that your muscles have relaxed and the pins and needles sensation has passed. The muscles that help your eyes focus make around 100,000 movements a day. If you want to make your leg muscles move as much, you'll need to walk 50 miles. Déjà vu might actually be something like a brain processing lag. There's a theory claiming it might happen when your brain is moving information from one part to another. If there's even the tiniest delay in that process, your brain will get the same information twice. In this case, it'll process it as an event that happened before. Out of all those people who can move their ears, only 30% can move just one ear. Your mouth burns when you're snacking on pineapple because while you're eating this fruit, it's eating you back. Pineapple is the only known food that contains bromelain. That's an enzyme that breaks down proteins. Luckily, your stomach acid knows how to deal with the offending enzyme. If you have a tickle in your throat, scratch your ear. This stimulates a nerve which results in a muscle spasm in your throat. And in no time, the tickle is gone. Surprisingly, you burn more calories when you're sleeping than when you're watching TV. Ask your friend to sit down on a chair and put your index finger on their forehead. Then tell them to stand up without using their hands. They won't be able to do it. Just like salamanders regrow their tails, humans might be able to regenerate cartilage. That's rubber-like stuff surrounding your joints. Scientists have recently discovered that cartilage could repair itself. This process is likely to be the most effective at the ankle, not that effective in the knee, and the least effective in the hip. If you're lying in bed and suddenly experience vertigo, place one of your feet on the floor. Your brain will receive the information that you're standing on something firm, and the unpleasant sensation will pass. Only 30% of people can flare their nostrils. If someone is tapping you on the back while you're hugging, they're non-verbally asking you to let go. People with a single palmar crease have just one line running across their palm. Such people are very rare, just 1.5% of the world's population. Most people have two palmar creases. Men are more likely to have a single palmar crease than women. In most cases, it runs in families. Your taste buds have a very short life cycle. They live for no longer than 10 to 14 days. Your lips are hundreds of times more sensitive than your fingertips. Your skin wrinkles when you stay in the water for too long, but it doesn't happen because it absorbs water. In reality, wrinkled fingers and toes provide you with a better grip. Studies have proved that sneezing is your nose's way to reset. A sneeze reboots the cells that line the insides of your nose. They're called cilia. If a person has anosmia, which is also called smell blindness, they don't distinguish and detect smells. The amount of food you consume in your lifetime will weigh as much as 8 Asian elephants. No wonder that people spend almost 4 years of their life eating. Your skin analyzes 1 million bits of data per second. Your ears and nose process 100,000 bits each. And your tongue is the least productive. It analyzes just 1,000 bits. Multitasking is kind of impossible. What we consider multitasking is actually just our brain switching between different tasks really fast. Unfortunately, in this case, people tend to make mistakes much more often. Plus, you may need twice as much time to do a task as usual. On the other hand, when you're engaged in some physical activity you've done many times before, you can perform a mental task too. That's why you can easily jog or take a shower and think about problems at work. If you see someone constantly fixing their sleeves, they likely feel very nervous, and fiddling with something is a self-soothing technique. You can check how unique you are by chewing on a sprig of cilantro. For some people, this herb may taste similar to soap because the plant contains a chemical used in soap making. But only 4 to 14% of the world's population have special genes that can detect it. Are you one of them? A grown-up person uses around 200 muscles to make just one step. Your eyes never stop moving while taking in visual information. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to see the whole picture. These movements go unnoticed because your brain is a great video editor. It stabilizes the images and connects tons of fragments into one smooth video. Your stomach gets a totally new lining every 3 to 4 days. That's how your body prevents the stomach from digesting itself. When a person lies, the temperature around their nose and in the inner corners of their eyes rises. This phenomenon is known as the Pinocchio effect. The liver is the only human organ that can regenerate completely. Even if it's a mere 25% of the original liver weight, the organ can get back to its full size. Synesthesia is an unusual and rare ability. People who have it can taste music or hear colors, but only 1 in every 2,000 people has it. These days, our finger and toenails grow faster than they did half a century ago. It might be because people eat more proteins today. You start feeling thirsty once your water loss reaches 1% of your body weight. More than 5% and you may even faint. Water loss that exceeds 10% of the body weight, we'll just say that it doesn't end well. Your brain can generate more than 48 thoughts in under a minute. It's almost 3,000 thoughts per hour and more than 70,000 per day. Each person has around 150,000 hairs on their head. On average, every strand grows about a half an inch per month. If you combine the growth from each hair, it would measure the distance of 10 miles per year. If you get a leg cramp, pull your big toe toward yourself. This will stretch your muscles and reduce the spasm. People have bacteria that can produce electricity living in their intestines. These bacteria give off electrons, which creates tiny electrical currents. This might be the bacteria's way to generate energy. Maybe turn on some lights. Hey, it's dark in there. By the end of their life, the average person can recall up to 150 trillion pieces of information. If you brush your teeth before eating or drinking something, you might end up damaging your taste buds. That's because most kinds of toothpaste contain 2 chemicals, sodium lauryl ether sulfate and sodium lauryl sulfate, that decrease your ability to taste sweet things and increase your ability to taste bitter food. The DEC2 gene mutation allows people to have just a few hours of sleep a night and still feel great. They don't get tired and never sleep in. Boy, where do I get one of those? On average, these people wake up at 4 or 5 a.m. Only up to 5% of the world's population has this feature. Only humans can produce emotional tears. Other living beings cry to lubricate their eyes. Women have more taste buds on their tongues than men do. It might be one of the reasons why 35% of ladies are super tasters, people who feel flavors more strongly than others, and only 15% of guys can boast the same ability. It's hard for people to recognize someone they know if, in a photo, this person doesn't have eyebrows. This proves that eyebrows are more important for face recognition than eyes. When clasping their hands, 50% of people put their right thumb above the left one. 49% of people position their left thumb over the right. And only 1% of people place their thumbs next to each other. Your brain contains more than 86 billion nerve cells, which are joined with one another by 100 trillion connections. That's way more than the number of stars in our home Milky Way galaxy. And if you decided to count all those numerous nerve cells, it would take you up to 3,000 years. A tremendous waste of time. Your brain's memory capacity equals 4 terabytes on a hard drive. That's more than 8 million photos. You're likely to keep in memory up to 10,000 different faces. This number is different from person to person, but the average is 5,000. It doesn't mean you can put a name to each face. It's only about recognizing the features. If you walked in the same direction for 12 hours a day, you would need around 800 days to travel around the globe. The Bajau is a group of nomadic people that live in the waters surrounding the Philippines, Indonesia, and Malaysia. Thanks to a rare DNA mutation, they can stay underwater for up to 13 minutes. They also dive to a depth of 200 feet. Blue cheese can affect your dreams, making them more vivid. Your ears might pop or even hurt when you are on an airplane. You can solve this problem by simply chewing some gum. This opens up the eustachian tube, a small passage that connects your throat and your middle ear. Opening this passage up helps equalize the pressure in your ears and puts an end to the popping. You can also yawn to open up the eustachian tube. Your dreams are a complex mix of your imagination, memories, and knowledge. The average person has from 4 to 7 dreams every night, but not all people remember them. Even if fingerprints get badly damaged, they grow back with their original pattern. If you have to deal with complaining customers, put a mirror behind your back. When an angry person approaches you, they'll see themselves in the mirror. This will prevent them from acting rudely. No one likes seeing themselves this way. Your feet are likely to become bigger with time. When people grow older, ligaments and tendons in their feet weaken. This makes the arches flatter, and feet become wider and longer. Only 3% of people in the world have lines that form the letters X on both their palms. In many cultures, this is believed to be a sign of a strong personality. The human brain is 73% water, just like your heart. That's why if your brain loses even 2% of liquid, you start feeling exhausted. This also makes your memory worse, shortens your attention span, and puts a dampener on your mood. In most people, their height is the same as their arm span. Check it out. A particular gene mutation results in super dense bones that are almost impossible to break. They're several times tougher than the average person's bones. People with this mutation also have skin that is less prone to aging. You might have noticed little dots traveling in squiggly lines when you're looking at a bright light or blue sky. They're usually only visible for a second or two. Sometimes they look like tiny worms. Well, those are your white blood cells moving through the capillaries in front of the retina, the light-sensitive tissue at the back of your eyes. Most people don't even notice the dots unless you ask them to pay attention. If someone is listening to you with their eyebrows raised, they're likely genuinely interested in your story. If you decided to uncoil the human DNA, the whole thing would stretch for 10 billion miles. That's 40,000 times the distance between Earth and the Moon. Human teeth are almost as strong as those of a shark. The enamel of your teeth, that's the outer layer, is the hardest substance in your entire body. Your nostrils don't work with the same efficiency all the time. When you breathe, one nostril does most of the work. They switch every couple of hours. Your right ear is more responsive to speech, and your left ear is better at perceiving music. Researchers think that's because it's your left hemisphere that processes speech, while the right one deals with music and other creative functions. Your lips look red because of a great number of tiny blood capillaries right below the skin. While enjoying your favorite cold food or beverage, you might suddenly get a painful brain freeze. This happens because the nerves at the roof of your mouth get frozen. They send signals to your brain asking it to please stop eating such cold stuff. But you can overcome this unpleasant sensation by pressing your tongue against the roof of your mouth. Do it as hard as you can. The pain will soon disappear. Your lips don't sweat because there are no sweat glands there. They also have no glands producing a special protective film that keeps your skin hydrated. That's why your lips are so vulnerable to the sun, wind, and cold. They also dry out faster than other body parts. You wouldn't be able to taste food if your body didn't produce saliva. Your taste buds have special receptors that recognize different flavors. But without some liquid, flavors won't bind to the molecules of these receptors. There are only a few cells in your body that will stay with you throughout your entire life. Those are the cells in the inner lens of your eye, the muscle cells of your heart, and the neurons of your cerebral cortex. That's a fancy word for the outer layers of your brain. Millennials are people who are now between 25 and 40 years old, and they tend to be more forgetful than older people. The main reason for this phenomenon is higher levels of stress these folks have. People with albinism have little to no melanin. That's the pigment that gives color to your hair, skin, and eyes. It's a rare condition. In the U.S., only 1 in 18,000 to 20,000 people is born with albinism. But there's also ocular albinism, and it's even rarer. Experts think only 1 in 50,000 people has ocular albinism. During just one day, the blood in your body travels over 12,000 miles. That's half as long as the distance around Earth. Almost 25% of your body's cholesterol is in your brain. This substance is crucial for your memory and learning abilities. But the blood-brain barrier doesn't allow your brain cells to get cholesterol from the blood. That's why your brain produces its own kind of cholesterol. Paradoxically, even though your teeth are a part of the skeletal system, they don't count as bones. It might be because they, sadly, can't regenerate. But if a bone is broken, it heals on its own by producing new bone cells. Your eyes can see something for a mere 13 milliseconds, and it'll be enough time for your brain to process the image. For comparison, the average blink lasts from 100 to 400 milliseconds. Bright sunlight makes 17 to 35% of people sneeze. This phenomenon is called the photic sneeze reflex. Your fingers are extremely sensitive. They can feel objects that are no bigger than the width of your hair. If your finger was the size of Earth, you'd still feel the difference between cars and houses. If there is a calorie chart in a restaurant, people tend to order less healthy and more high-calorie food. They compare the difference between, let's say, a burger and a large serving of Caesar salad, and notice that it isn't that big. And since the burger seems to be more filling, that's what they order. But when people don't know that a big portion of salad contains almost as many calories as the burger, they pick a healthier option.
Most people have 12 pairs of rib bones, which means 24 ribs in total. But some have 25. 1 in 200 people is born with the so-called cervical rib. It forms right above the first rib and grows at the base of a person's neck, above the collarbone. A cervical rib can be located on the left, right, or both sides. You can have it without even knowing about it. This extra rib doesn't necessarily form completely. It can be just a thin strand of tissue fibers, not even an X-ray can see. In most cases, it's really not a big deal, unless it starts putting pressure on nerves and blood vessels. You probably don't think that much when you're filling out a form and come across the eye color section. But it's not that simple for people who have this rare body feature called heterochromia. That's when a person has a difference in eye color, Complete heterochromia means you have two different colored eyes, like one blue and one brown eye. But there's also partial heterochromia. It means only a part of your iris is a different color from the rest. In the US, fewer than 200,000 people have it. Natural red hair is not as common as you might think. Only 2% of the world's population has it. There are 8 genes responsible for it. Scientists used to link it with just one rare and recessive gene, MC1R, that you had to inherit in 2 versions from both of your parents. Then, they realized not every person with 2 red-haired versions got red hair. So, there have to be some other genes involved. Do you know which eye color is super rare? Gray. Most people have either brown, blue, or hazel eyes. About 17% of people have blue eyes, but the odds of getting those and red hair at the same time are just around 0.17%. Less than 1% have gray eyes. If you have gray eyes, it's because of a low level of melanin in the front layer of your iris. There are just 43 people in the world that have this extremely rare body feature called golden blood. About 0.6% of Americans are AB negative, but this is still not the rarest type in the world. In 1961, scientists discovered there's an indigenous Australian with a specific blood type, the type that completely lacks certain antigens, Rh, which means proteins or red blood cells. Those who have that exclusive type can donate to others with rare blood types, but can receive it only from one of those other 40-ish people who have it. That's why it's golden blood. It's worth its weight in gold. Another rare body feature is a small hole near the ear, pre-auricular pit. At first, it seems like some sort of a gill. Some scientists have a theory it could be some sort of evolutionary remains from times when we were aquatic creatures. This tiny hole is mostly present near one ear, not both. Some people have chimp-like feet. They're bendy, flexible, and adapted for climbing trees. Researchers at Boston University filmed 400 people walking barefoot and concluded that 1 in 13, or 8% of the participants, had this feature. Typically, the human foot is rigid. We've evolved that way so we can efficiently walk on even terrains. At least, that's something you could learn from textbooks. But other apes have flexible feet. This allows them to grasp branches as they move through the trees. The kind of foot that's similar to tree-dwelling apes is flexible at the middle. It bends at the ball of the foot and is halfway between the ball and the heel. Human feet normally have a joint at this point, but the majority of people have stiff ligaments that span the joint. That's how they keep it rigid. Those rare people with chimp-like feet have softer ligaments that allow their midfoot to bend. Try to move your middle finger or your pinky. It's hard to do without bending your ring finger, right? Well, that's how it works for most people. But there are some who can completely isolate their ring finger. Researchers believe it's hereditary. If you can touch your nose or chin with your tongue, it means you stand with around 5% of the world's population that can do that. Most people's tongues won't reach that far out, no matter how hard they try. Some women have super color vision. With this, you're able to see and distinguish colors thanks to special cells in your eyes called cones. People usually have 3 types of cones, but scientists are especially interested in tetrachromats. They believe these people have 4 types of cones. Thanks to that, they're able to see 100 million different colors. One research team from Newcastle University spent years searching for such people. Finally, in 2010, they found one of them. It sounds like a magic power at first, but it's not always fun. One tetrachromat said going to the grocery store can be a real nightmare because it's like seeing a trash pile of colors coming in at every angle. There are people born with a double row of eyelashes, a condition known as distichiasis. That extra row emerges from the ducts of meibomian glands. One of the celebrity examples for such a rare genetic mutation was Elizabeth Taylor. Here's something you can try. Move your right foot off the ground. Go in a clockwise direction. Can you draw the number 6 with your big toe? No pencil or paper allowed, just your toe. The majority of people will soon notice they've started moving their foot in the opposite direction without even realizing it. This partially happens because the number features a counterclockwise circle. only in some rare cases, when either the brain is wired in a different way or, thanks to practicing, can some people do it the other way around. You've probably also heard that myth that it's not possible to sneeze with your eyes open. Well, it is. There are cranial nerves that link your eyes and your nose. That's the reason why, when sneezing, most people automatically close their eyes. But it's still possible to sneeze with your eyes open, and nope, your eyes won't pop out because of it. There are people who can make a roaring noise in their heads. All they have to do is tense their ears or jaws. We all have this small muscle in our ear, the tensor tympani. Its role is to silence certain sounds that can really distract you. For example, when you're chewing. And some have the ability to flex that tiny muscle. That way, they create an audible rumble, like there's a small lion roaring inside their head. Can you bend your thumb backward? If so, you must have something called hitchhiker's thumb. It's a double-jointed thumb that allows them to bend it backwards. There's no risk in doing this, and it's not something very uncomfortable for them. It's possible thanks to distal joints within the thumb. In some cases, people can move only one thumb backward, while others can move both. There's a rare body feature that turns some people into super tasters. Genetics plays a role in many things, including our taste buds. Approximately 25% of the world's population is in the category of super tasters. Compared to regular tasters, they have more visible tiny dots on their tongue, called taste papillae. It makes them more sensitive to certain tastes, like those that are sweet, bitter, and salty. They have more pain receptors than average, which is why they're not that into spicy food. Also, they most likely won't eat that many vegetables, since the taste will be too bitter to them. Wisdom teeth used to be important once, and we don't quite need them anymore, but their absence is actually a pretty rare body feature. These days, when wisdom teeth, also known as third molars, try to break through the gums, in many cases, they run out of space. As a result, it can get overcrowded inside your mouth. So many people have to get rid of those extra teeth. About 5 million people every year to be precise. Synesthesia is the phenomenon when a brain mixes up certain senses. So, a person with synesthesia is able to taste music or hear colors. People say Mozart had it. For instance, he'd see D major as a warm orangey sound and B flat minor as blackish. This condition is rare. Approximately 1 in 2,000 people have it, and the majority of those are left-handed or women. Imagine you can recall what you were having for breakfast 15 years ago, like it was yesterday. Sure, you keep some special memories, but there are people that can recall everything that has happened to them till now, as clearly as they recall things from this morning. If you give them a certain date, they'll be able to tell you what they did and where they were in the slightest detail. It's called highly superior autobiographical memory, HSAM, or hyperthymesia, and only 60 people on the planet have it.
Now, men and women might seem like completely different species sometimes. What's that old saying? Men are from Mars, women are from Venus? But let's face it, we all come in a variety of different shapes and sizes, with different personalities, tastes, and even hair colors. There's certainly no competition. We're all amazing in our own unique way. But there's no denying those inherent biological differences between male and female bodies. When it comes to men, we may not be from a different planet, as far as we know. But there's a lot about the male body that may surprise even you fellas out there. So put on your doctor's coat and get your stethoscope ready to examine some unknown facts about the male body. Testosterone is one of the key factors for physical attributes considered uniquely male. This includes markedly higher hair growth on men's bodies, for example, on their chests and faces. Something less noticeable, though, is the thickness of their skin, and we're speaking in the literal sense. Thanks to higher levels of testosterone, men, on average, have skin that is 20 to 25% thicker than women's skin. More specifically, the deeper layer of our skin called the dermis. This results in men having overall tougher skin with a rougher texture. This doesn't necessarily mean it's completely advantageous, though. In fact, men experience collagen loss at a more consistent rate than women do, at least in their younger years. That collagen loss results in the skin thinning, sagging, and becoming more prone to wrinkles. So, the older men get, the thinner their skin becomes. At the same time, men's thicker skin does stave off signs of aging for longer. So there are definitely pros as much as there are cons. While women show signs of aging sooner, the physical aging process for men, when it does happen, is faster, and the wrinkles are fully grooved. Think of your skin as a rubber eraser. The thicker the eraser, the longer it will last. But when wear and cracks start to appear, they are more pronounced. A smart approach to skincare can help preserve smooth and healthy skin, and more importantly, regular application of sunscreen, even when you're indoors. Now, is it just me or has it gotten a little hot in here? You've probably debated with your friends or family members over the temperature in the room, whether to turn the AC up or down or keep the fan running. Most of the time, the men in the room are likely feeling a little too warm, and though the feeling may not be unanimous, it doesn't mean they're wrong. The main cold receptors in the male skin are kinda desensitized. This doesn't mean that men are biologically built to live in the middle of the Arctic, but their tolerance to cold temperatures is definitely higher. There's also a big difference in the circulatory system when body temperature is concerned. While women have a higher core temperature and are susceptible to sudden shifts in the ambient temperature, the core temperature in men is less affected. That's why temperature changes often go unnoticed. The room temperature is not the only matter in which men and women don't see eye to eye. So, let's look at eyes. Men see a smaller range of colors than women, so where men might see basic blue, women will likely see more subtle gradation, like lavender blue. At the same time, men have a better eye for distant moving objects. So, the difference between how men and women see the world extends beyond color. Studies suggest that the physiological cause of this variation in gender optics is, once again, testosterone. Men have more testosterone receptors than women, which leads to a different organization in the neurons in the visual cortex. One theory as to why lies in evolution, specifically that of our hunter-gatherer ancestors. It's possible that long-sightedness benefited males in distinguishing prey and predators from afar. At the same time, women may have developed a more distinct close-range visual palette for foraging and gathering. Nowadays, though hunter-gatherer practices are less common, men can still spot their favorite restaurant from a distance as they're driving past. So, have times really changed all that much? To help chow down on their favorite meal, men also have larger teeth. While what is considered to be masculine or feminine as far as teeth are concerned is entirely up to perspective, men tend to have a sizable advantage. This is particularly noticeable in the incisors and canines, which are wider in diameter and sharper. This means that the typical male smile is full of bulkier and squarer chompers. The answer for this may once again be found in evolutionary physiology. Our primitive ancestors had a quite confrontational hierarchy, meaning that males needed to assert their dominance. Much like modern apes, it's possible those males bared their fangs to intimidate other males and potential threats. Larger canines were a sign of a more formidable individual. While you might not find such behavior among modern men, our larger teeth can account for wider jawlines, often considered a feature associated with masculinity. On the contrary, a display of big pearly whites is often a sign of joy. Say cheese! Larger teeth aren't the only unique masculine trait that has to do with the mouth. I'm talking about that less than elegant snorting and rattling noise that can occur when some people sleep. While snoring is attributed to both men and women, almost twice as many men are prone to snoring. Sleep studies show that every 4 in 10 men are likely to be habitual snorers. That's 40% of men compared to 24% of women. While there's a multitude of causes for habitual snoring, male biology is the main culprit behind these statistics. By biological design, most men have large upper airways and lower-hanging larynxes. This results in a large space in the back of their throat where snores are amplified. Men also tend to have more abdominal body fat, likely due to a higher intake of carbs. Carrying more weight, especially in the neck, chest, and thorax, puts more pressure on the airways, effectively increasing the risk of snoring. Though your partner may not appreciate it, in most cases, snoring is relatively harmless. However, it can also be an indication of an underlying health problem, so it's worth looking into. Now, have you ever wondered why men typically have deeper vocals? Deeper vocals. This naturally has to do with the throat. A larger size of the male larynx contributes to another unique feature of the male body, the Adam's apple. This lump of cartilage that sticks out from the throat is formed as the larynx grows behind it, pushing it outward. By the way, some females with a larger than average larynx can also develop an Adam's apple. The inherent difference, however, remains in the sound of our voices. The larynx is what produces our voice. A larger larynx creates deeper and louder sounds as there is more room for vibrations to resonate. And since the size of the Adam's apple depends on the size of the larynx behind, a larger Adam's apple can also mean a deeper voice. The cartilage that is the Adam's apple acts as a shield to protect the larynx from injury. Beyond that, it serves no individual function. Now, we wouldn't recommend a musical duet with someone who has a larger Adam's apple. Chances are they'll have a hard time projecting above their pitch. Now, while we're up around the face, let's take a look at the eyelashes. Did you know that men have a higher hereditary chance of growing longer and thicker lashes? Primarily, eyelashes serve as eye protection against various elements. Besides, they're considered an attractive facial feature. So, we're sorry ladies, men win this round most of the time. But why are men more likely to have longer eyelashes? Well, it all goes back to that common cause for most uniquely male features – testosterone. As I mentioned before, men have higher levels of testosterone, which affects their body hair growth. This includes eyelashes. It also goes back to their primary function. Your eyelashes are a form of protection. They help keep your eyes moisturized, preventing them from becoming dry and irritated. They also shield them from harmful airborne particles, such as dirt and dust. So, eyelashes are one of your body's few features which combines fashion and function. For all our biological differences, there's actually something in common between men and women, more than you might think. For starters, it's time to stop thinking of dramatic hormonal changes as exclusively feminine. And while women are fully aware of the challenges their bodies face when these changes occur, men are more ignorant of it. It might not be as frequent as on a monthly basis, but around 26% of men experience these regular hormonal shifts. Though the biological cause may be completely different, the symptoms can be remarkably similar. The reason for these shifts has to do with, that's right, testosterone. Men's testosterone levels tend to spike and then drop, depending on the season of the year. When these fluctuations happen, this can result in side effects such as fatigue, cramps, increased sensitivity, irritability, and mood swings. Mood swings? Ha! Well, yeah, most of us experience this, so we should all be more understanding of one another when those around us are experiencing hormonal changes for themselves.
You wake up one morning, and while you're brushing your teeth, you notice a lump on the inside of your mouth, under your tongue. Immediately you're concerned. You've never noticed this before? But not to worry. It's just torus mandibularis, a simple bony growth on the mandible of your mouth. If you have this extra bit of bone, you are part of the 40% of people with this anomaly. Although it can be more common depending on where you're from. For example, in the USA, this only occurs in 10% of the population. Bones are significant pieces within our bodies. We have 206 of them altogether. But some people may have an extra bone that they weren't expecting. We all have 12 pairs of ribs, equaling to 24 in total. However, 0.5% of people may have 25. The 25th is known as a cervical rib. Present from birth, it grows from the base of the neck, just above the collarbone. It can be on either side, as a fully formed rib, or just a thin strand of tissue fibers. There are some parts of our body that have remained with us throughout our evolution as a species, and some of us no longer share that same physical trait. The palmaris longus is a small tendon located in your wrist. By pressing the pads of your fourth finger and thumb, then clenching your wrist, the inside of your wrist will show the palmaris longus popping out. If this isn't visible, then you are part of a relatively small percentage that no longer possesses it. Lacking it has no effects on the strength of your grip, but being absent does give a decreased pinch strength in the fourth and fifth finger. It's believed that this muscle was actively used sometime in the evolutionary process of our species. It hasn't affected our bodies in any way, and it's merely a trait that some of us continue to have. It's also not dependent on either hand, regardless of which hand is dominant. Which hand do you use more often? If you're left-handed, you're part of the 10% club. And if you're ambidextrous, you're within the 1% to use both of your hands dominantly. Most ambidextrous people initially only use their left hand. Ambidexterity and left-handedness share the indication that they are using both sides of the brain. Right-handed people are generally dominant only to the left side of the brain. We all have tailbones, a reminder of our long story of evolution. We stopped using our tails around 25 million years ago. Although, while we are still growing as embryos, we go through the process of growing a tail, and after about 8 weeks, we lose it completely. There are some cases of humans being born with a tail. There are about 25 confirmed cases known to scientists. Those born with tails, though, won't have any real benefit, other than what the tailbone does for balance anyway. The tails have no function other than physically being there, as they have no bones. The tails only consist of nerves, vessels, and muscles. Do you find that you are a picky eater? Do you think that coriander tastes like soap? Or you can't stand pineapple on pizza? This may be due to what kind of taster you are. Up to 30% of people are considered super tasters and will experience different levels of enjoyment or disappointment from their foods. Food that is bitter to the super taster will likely be sweet to average tasters, who make up 40% of people. There are also 30% of people who are non-tasters and won't find anything too exciting. Do you have the ability to identify musical notes? About 1 in 10,000 people can flawlessly distinguish perfect pitch naturally. Although this doesn't necessarily mean that they will be the next big pop star. They're just able to easily identify a specific musical note upon listening to it. Our eye colors are so diverse. The difference in light exposure to eyes throughout the world determines how much melanin is produced, which helps create many different shades of color. Since migration has become more common over the past 100 years, the variations of shades of color are numerous. Your genes, of course, also playing a huge part. We could list hundreds of different shades of eye color to show how many variations there are, but we'll limit the distinct categories down to 6 main color groups to keep this brief. The vast majority of people have brown eyes. About 79% of the world's population share this eye color. Once, all humans only had the brown pigmentation, until around 6,000 to 10,000 years ago, when humans migrated to Northern Europe. A mutation occurred, helping the eyes to adapt to the change of light. Blue eyes became the most common of the mutated coloration, and all of them today can be traced back to one ancestor from Europe. Today, blue eyes make up around 10% of the human population. Amber and hazel eyes each take up 5% respectively. Gray eyes are up to 3%, and the rarest of eye colors are green ones, consisting of only 2%. Rarer still is heterochromia iridum, where both eyes are of different colors. It's inherited and also affected by other genetic factors. Only 1% of the human population have this incredibly rare attribute. Although blue eyes have become more common, they're only more prominent within areas where people contribute similar variants of genes, since blue eyes are a recessive trait, just like red hair, which only occurs within up to 2% of the population. If you have red hair and blue eyes, you will be part of the smallest percentile for hair and eye variety that makes up only 0.17% of the human population. Although green, gray, and hazel eyes are less abundant than blue, their genes are more dominant. So, within the small pool of redheads, blue eyes are less likely to occur. The melanin that has helped mutate eye colors can also have other effects on the human body. A genetic mutation that affects the melanin occurs in 0.005% of people in the USA, creating albinism. The occurrence differs in many ways throughout the world, the same as the effects with eyes. In albinism, the pigment production is altered to distribute major cells that affect the coloring of the skin, the hair, and the eyes. Most people with albinism will have snow-white skin, snow-white hair, and their eyes are a pale blue-pinkish color, the pupil itself being red. The redness comes from the light reflecting off the vessels in the retina. There is another form of albinism which has a smaller amount of pigmentation, and the shade of skin and hair are slightly darker. Albinism occurs not only in humans, but practically all mammals, reptiles, and amphibians. Do you have a small hole at the front of your ear above the ear canal? This is the preauricular pit. During the first 6 weeks of a child's development, long before being born, the auricle, which is the external part of your ear, will develop. The preauricular pit forms when the auricle doesn't fully fuse. This occurs within less than 1% of humans. Although there's speculation that having this little hole is the remnant of gills that we once had from our seafaring ancestors, there's nothing solid to confirm this theory. There are some unique things we have that give us an advantage in everyday life. Some people carry a gene mutation of the DEC2 gene, also known in proper English as familial natural short sleepers. Essentially, it means people within this 1% only require about 6 hours of sleep each day. Most people will probably feel burned out after a day of this, but those lucky enough to be within this 1% will be sure to make the most out of their day. Have you ever looked at a picture and noticed that the color of something was different to what someone else can see? It may be that you have a rare ability to see more colors than everyone else, possibly seeing 100 million different kinds of shades. If you do, you're part of the rare group of people called tetrachromats, who have 4 cone cells in their eyes, unlike everyone else who has 3, and are identified as a trichromat. Studies are varied on who is part of this rare ocular phenomenon, though it's more prominent in females. It's suggested that up to 15% of women have this rare capability. Incredibly, it's an ability also shared with some species of birds, insects, fish, and other mammals.
Well, here's some facts you'll find hard to digest. Your stomach has a pretty incredible capacity, being able to hold up to half a gallon of liquids. That's a whole large bottle of Coke. It's pretty hard to estimate how much hard food you can eat because it's processed with your teeth before it gets to your stomach. There's definitely not enough room for a turkey, but a good-sized chicken would probably fit in it. If you were asked where your stomach was, you would probably point to your tummy. Sorry, that's wrong. It's actually up here, hidden in between your ribs. Scientists believe that the appendix will disappear eventually. Nobody really knows why we need it, but some researchers claim it might have existed to help our ancestors digest tree bark. Because it's no longer part of our daily diet, the appendix isn't necessary and can disappear from our bodies without any consequences. The appendix isn't the only obsolete part of our body. Wisdom teeth aren't that useful either. Yeah, they used to come in handy whenever our ancestors lost some of their teeth, but the only thing they help us lose now is the money we spend extracting them. Almost all of our body is covered with hairs, even if we don't notice them. They grow even in the belly button. Their purpose is to catch lint. Check it out. See? Your liver acts as your own personal bodyguard, protecting you from toxins and many other things you don't want hanging around in your body. It's also pretty indestructible and can even regenerate. Only about 43% of you is actually you. Over 50% of the cells in your body belong to tiny little creatures that mainly live in your gut. Still, even though your own cells are fewer than microbial ones, there are, on average, about 100 trillion of them in you. See, you're not alone. With this in mind, your own genes are less than half of what you really consist of. If you take all the microbes dwelling within your body and count their genes, you'll find between 2 to 20 million. If you sleep, it doesn't mean all of your body sleeps. In fact, sometimes your brain has to work even harder when you're asleep. It needs to process tons of information, and reports usually take a lot of time. The nose definitely gets a good rest while you're sleeping. Amazingly, your sense of smell basically deactivates at night. You wouldn't even be bothered if there was a really terrible smell in your bedroom. No comment. The nose is probably one of the most underappreciated parts of the body. We wouldn't even be able to enjoy eating without it. About 80% of the taste of any food is thanks to the nose and its ability to recognize odors. If you hold your nose while eating, you will taste almost nothing. With no sense of smell, you're likely to recognize food mostly by texture. So an onion might seem no different than a big refreshing apple. Scientists used to believe we could distinguish about 10,000 smells, but they were wrong. Recent research showed that people are actually able to distinguish between more than 1 trillion smells. We also remember them better than anything else, and smells can even evoke some distant memories. Your nose just doesn't help you breathe and catch odors, it filters the air for sensitive throats and lungs. If we inhale dry air, the nose moistens it, cools it, and heats it if it's necessary. Also, the nose cleans the air of dirt. When you age, your brain is gradually reducing in size. By age 75, it's much smaller than at 30, and it starts shrinking by the age of 40. It happens to everyone and doesn't affect your mental strength in any way. Our brain can store only 7 bits in its short-term memory. Don't even try to compare your brain with a phone capacity, not even the one you had back in 2005. That's why you can't even learn a phone number by heart. Our short-term memory functions just like a chalkboard. You can get some information, but sooner or later, you run out of space. To check your working memory capacity, try this test. Ask a friend to write a list of 10 words and read it to you. Most people recall 7 or fewer items from that list. Your RAM, or working memory, is an essential thing that we need to perform almost any everyday activity, including basic conversations, surfing the net, and even petting your dog. Our strongest and emotional memories are often fake. The central memory gives us the confidence to believe that we remember everything, even though most of the details are made up in our heads. Not only your brain shrinks as you get older, you too shrink dramatically. The bones get more brittle, the backbone gets compressed. A similar thing happens when you rest at night. Your bones kind of relax too. Because of this, you wake up taller in the mornings than you are at the end of the day. Among mammals, only humans can walk on 2 legs for their entire lives. You might think that kangaroos or gorillas move in the same way, but kangaroos use their tail as a 3rd leg, and gorillas use their long arms to keep balance. Your bones take part in metabolism too. Since they mostly consist of calcium, when there's not enough of this element in your blood, bones start shedding it into the bloodstream, balancing your body. The same reaction works in reverse too. When there's too much calcium in your blood, it goes into the bones to be stored for later. The only bone to have a sense of humor in your body is inside your upper arm. That's why it's called the humerus. Okay, I made that one up. Moving along. The only bones that never grow are found in our ears. We can hear thanks to these tiny bones because they have adapted to transmit sound vibrations. Doctors call them the oscular chain. One of these hearing bones, the stapes, is the smallest bone in your entire body. It's no larger than a grain of rice. Our height, shape of our body, and skin color depend a lot on where our ancestors used to live, but we can adapt to new conditions even within our own lifespan. For example, If you move from plains to the mountains, you'll eventually develop more red blood cells to compensate for the lack of oxygen. And naturally, if you move from a colder climate to a hotter and sunnier one, your skin will get darker to adapt. Our lifespan is programmed within our cells. They constantly renew and divide, but they have a sort of internal timer that stops at some point. Some cells also stop reproducing sooner than others. On average, cells cease dividing when we reach the age of 100. That means, if we could find a way to trick ourselves into turning off the timer, we could potentially live forever. Body fat isn't just a nuisance. It acts as insulation material, energy reserve, and shock absorber. Your body sends the most fat into your waist region because that's where your internal organs are. If something happens to you, this layer of fat might protect your vitals from irreparable damage. Heads up! Your skull isn't a single bone. It actually consists of 28 different bones, many of which are fused together to protect your brain. The mandible, or the lower jaw, is the only skull bone that isn't fixed to the bone around it. It's attached with connective tissues and muscles. This is what makes it so mobile. You can move it in any direction you like. You see, the strongest muscles in your body aren't in your arms or legs, they're in your head. The masseter is the main muscle responsible for chewing, and it needs to be the strongest for you to eat normally. And you know those muscles that allow you to move your ears? Those are temporalis, located above your temples. They also help you chew your food. Now, we've got two really fast muscles. They control the eyelid closing. In fact, they're the fastest muscles in our body. Eyes are fragile and need protection, so the reflex that protects them needs to be as fast as lightning. These muscles can shut the eyelids in less than a tenth of a second. People with double-jointed thumbs can bend them backward. It looks super unusual and very few people can do it. Still, it's totally okay. Even though it looks painful, it actually doesn't hurt at all for someone with a double-jointed thumb. Now, we recognize only purple-blue, green-yellow, and yellow-red colors. Everything else is a combination of these three. It's impossible to calculate how many of these combinations the human eye sees, because every single person has slight vision differences. But it's about 1 million combinations on average. You see?
The cornea is the only part of your body with living cells that doesn't have blood vessels. It gets nutrients and oxygen directly from the tear fluid on the outside, and the thick watery substance you have between the cornea on the inside, and also from the nerve fibers connected to the cornea. That's why contact lenses used to be a potential issue. The older ones were reducing oxygen supply, since the cornea mostly gets oxygen from the outside. This problem was solved, or at least reduced, when silicone hydrogel lenses came to the market. Some other parts of your body with no blood vessels are your nails, hair, outer skin layers, and tooth enamel. Did you notice your sweat sometimes smells of onions after your workout? You have nothing to worry about. There are two types of sweat glands in your skin. The first kind of glands are located on certain areas of your body, like the groin region and the armpits. They produce a specific oily fluid, which is a response to certain emotional experiences. Another type of sweat gland is way more common. They're distributed all over your body and are responsible for the specific sweat you get after the workout. The sweat cools your body down as it evaporates from your skin. It's 99% water, so it's practically odorless. Well, at least when it first leaves the pores and comes to the surface of your skin. But there are many types of bacteria on the human skin, and they feed on the nutrients in that sweat, together with skin flakes. One of the byproducts of this is specific chemicals, and their smell can sometimes strongly remind you of onion. You may have noticed you produce more saliva when you go for a run, especially if it's a short jog in cold weather. But if you're running a marathon and it's a nice warm day outside, you'll produce less saliva. It's your body trying to offset the drying effect, since you breathe through your mouth way more. But your body becomes more dehydrated over longer periods. which is why it's trying to conserve water by reducing saliva production. Every training you do, no matter how intensive it is, also makes you secrete more of a specific type of protein. It makes the saliva more viscous and sticky, which is why you may feel like your mouth is dry way more after your workout. Humans see the world 15 seconds out of date, which means your brain constantly keeps you a little bit in the past. This way, it helps you stabilize your vision of the world around you. Your eyes receive a huge amount of visual information. Yep, literally millions of colors, shapes, and ever-changing motion wherever you turn. It's not an easy task for your brain to process all that. The visual world alters all the time because of changes in viewpoint, light, and the rest of the outer factors. Your visual input changes because you need to blink. Plus, your head, eyes, and your entire body are always in some sort of motion. Your brain has to establish a mechanism that can create illusory stability. It automatically smooths your visual input. It doesn't analyze every little visual snapshot. It's like a time machine. You actually perceive an average of things you saw in the past 15 seconds at any given moment. The brain pulls together objects so they appear more similar to each other. That's why it tricks you into believing you're in stable surroundings. If your brain kept you updated in real time, the world would feel like a very, very chaotic place with constant changes in movement, light, and shadow, which would probably feel like you were hallucinating all the time. Your bones are really strong, but your teeth, which we also consider as part of the skeletal system, are even stronger. That's because of the enamel, the hard outer layer of your tooth. The enamel keeps the tissue and the delicate nerves inside your teeth safe. You're basically burning calories while you're thinking. When you rest and don't engage in any particular activity except for the basics, which includes digesting, breathing, and keeping yourself warm, it's the stage where your brain uses up to 20 to 25% of the total energy of your body. That means your body will burn around 350 to 450 calories per day while pretty much doing nothing. We're not the only ones in the animal kingdom with such a mechanism. Some small mammals like the minuscule pygmy marmoset and the tiny tree shrew devote the same percentage of their total body energy to their brain. Most of the energy the brain burns is to help its cells, the neurons, to communicate with each other. They do it via chemical signals the brain transmits across synapses, those special cell structures. So, the brain directs a lot of energy towards synapses in order to make them work. Your brain never really rests. Even when you're sleeping, certain parts are active. So, your brain needs its fuel to work, and you're basically burning calories in your sleep. The more demanding mental tasks you take throughout the day, the more calories you burn. So, if you skip today's workout, solve some Sudoku. Do you like to rush with your ice cream? Sometimes it pays off, but if you do it often, you must know the feeling of brain freeze pretty well. It's a pretty intense and uncomfortable feeling that comes from the front or sides of your head right after you drink or eat something cold, such as a slushy drink, ice cream, or an ice pop. Some people even go through a similar sensation whenever they're exposed to cold air. Scientists are still not sure exactly why this happens, but one of the theories is the cold substance stimulates a cluster of nerves located at the back of the palate. Another theory says the blood vessels in the roof of the mouth and sinuses quickly constrict because the temperature in your mouth drops before they dilate again. Brain freeze is not something dangerous that you should be seriously worried about. And no, hanging over the table, groaning, or clasping your head in your hands won't help much. Some people like to sleep a lot. Hey, guilty as charged. But some have a certain condition called familiar natural short sleepers, which means they're kind of immune to sleep deprivation. About 1% of our population has it. They can fall short on sleep and feel pretty good about it. They're fine with sleeping for 6 hours per night. This amount would wreck the majority of people after a couple of nights. The human eye normally has 3 cones. That means we can recognize approximately 1 million different shades in the green, red, and blue spectrums of colors. But there are some people with a rare condition, so-called tetrachromats, that have 4 cones in their eyes. This allows them to see ultraviolet shades, which means they can distinguish 100 million distinct colors. Did you know your skeleton is all wet? I mean, your entire body mostly consists of water, up to 60%. That fluid is not only in your organs, muscles, and skin, it's in your skeleton too. Your bone mass is almost 1/3 water. There's this amazing hidden network a human body holds inside. Blood vessels are really small, but if you could line them all up, you'd get something huge. Your entire body boasts a network of 60,000 miles of blood vessels. One of the ways to keep your network healthy is by eating right. Have you ever wondered why our distant relatives, the primates, are so much stronger than us? In many ways, our bodies are very similar. Look at the chimp's muscle structure, for example. But our closest primate relatives are approximately 1.35 times stronger than us. The human body developed more slow-twitch muscle fibers compared to the rest of the primates. This type of muscle fiber is a less powerful one, but it lets us endure more than other primates and do things like foraging and hunting, activities that helped our distant ancestors to survive. That's also the reason why we can run a marathon. A monkey could never do it. But we'd still lose in a strength competition. Laughter is contagious. It's not just a metaphor. Researchers have found that strong emotions can make the brain activity of different people sink. Laughter is something science usually links with social creatures. People are almost 30 times more likely to laugh when in some social situations, hanging out with their friends or people they feel relaxed with. One of the theories says that you're probably going to join when you see your friend laughing because humans are empathetic beings. Your brain will release endorphins when you're laughing. These are special chemicals that make you feel safe and at ease. So we're not sure why exactly our laughter is contagious, but it feels really good, so...
So, when someone is lying, their nose gives it away. And no, it does not grow longer. You haven't seen mine. It turns out that when a person lies, the temperature around their nose, as well as the inner corners of their eyes, rises. So, imagine you're on a first date, and the person tells you something hard to believe. You whip out your thermometer and take the temperature of their nose. Then they take your temperature, and back and forth it goes all night long. Actually, there are better things to do, but I'm not going to spoil it for you. Women's hearts beat faster than men's. The average male's heart rate is between 70 and 72 beats per minute. At the same time, the average for women is between 78 and 82 beats. This is because women's hearts are generally smaller than men's. The female heart pumps less blood with each beat, so it needs to work a little harder to keep up with the male's. Your lungs are one of the largest organs in your body. Their total surface area is almost the same as a tennis court. And the total length of the airways running through them is similar to the distance from Chicago to Las Vegas. And all this manages to fit inside your body. Now, nerve impulses your brain sends travels at a speed of around 170 miles per hour. That's as fast as a high-speed train. The amount of food consumed by the average human in their lifetime weighs as much as 8 Asian elephants. It's unsurprising that we spend around 4 years of our life eating. Ooh, tongue twister. 8 Asian elephants, 8 Asian elephants. Now, we shed our skin as it's actually food for fungi, bacteria, and other stuff we definitely want to stay away from. We get rid of around 600,000 particles of skin every hour. That's why they call me Dusty. Your eyes get their color from a pigment called melanin. Brown-eyed people have more melanin than those with green eyes. The blood in your body travels 4 miles per hour, and it reaches your brain in just a few seconds. Some people can hear the sounds of their eyeballs moving. Ooh. It's a rare condition called canal dehiscence syndrome. It causes every single sound inside the body to be amplified. One man described it as hearing his eyes scratching like sandpaper every time they moved in their sockets. Wow. Then I guess watching a tennis match must get really loud. When you see a person smiling at you, you know how it feels, which can make you do the same. The same is with yawning. It's also some sort of unconscious way our brain makes social bonds with others that are yawning. Wisdom teeth used to have an important role. They were the third set of molars we used to mash meat and other firm food in our mouths. When our brains got bigger and we started eating softer food, jawbone structure changed, which means we didn't need wisdom teeth anymore. And that's why we've dumbed down. Nah, that's not why. When you're awake, your brain produces electricity. The actual amount is between 15 to 25 watts. That's enough to power an LED light. The electricity comes from the brain delivering millions of messages around the body every single second. These messages are how your brain tells your arms to move, for example. Think of your body as a super speedy highway for electrical signals. Your teeth are the only part of your body that can't repair itself. That's why dentists were created. But the enamel they're covered with is one of the toughest things in the human body. Now, scientists have noticed that people with bigger pupils are better at problem solving. Bigger pupilled individuals, yes, that is a legit word, can also focus better and ignore distractions, huh? Even their memory is sharper. We don't know the reasons for the phenomenon yet, but many people think it's because the pupil is linked to a spot in the brain that initiates your mental abilities. What? Humans can use echolocation just like whales or bats. Some blind people can get information about their surroundings in some sort of flashes in 3D perspective and have a strong sense of texture and density. They get information with sound waves. Our brains process those differently than light waves. Echolocation uses certain brain parts sighted people use for vision. Your skeletal cells never stop regenerating. That's why you get a new skeleton every 10 years or so. This process slows down with age, and the regeneration takes longer. That's one of the main reasons why bones become thinner. You must have heard of snakes shedding their skin. But humans do it too. Your skin's outer layer sheds every 2 to 4 weeks. That adds up to roughly 2 pounds of skin every year. That's the same weight as that of a pineapple. Ew. The enamel of our teeth is the hardest substance in the human body. 96% of it consists of minerals. Now, you'd have to stand for way more than 2 hours to burn the same amount of energy as you do in just 30 minutes of walking. The cornea of your eye is the only part of your body with no blood flow at all. It only gets oxygen. Your tongue is the only muscle with ends not connected to bone. Other muscles join 2 bones at both ends because that's how we pull and make a motion. The tongue is connected to the hyoid bone on one end, which is part of the neck, but there's nothing on the other side. Your sense of smell is the only one that goes directly to the part of the brain that controls your emotions and memories. Did I mention your pancreas? Your pancreas contains taste receptor cells that allow it to detect not only sugar but artificial sweeteners too. It uses the taste data to balance out hormones. Somebody actually counted this, and you swallow 600 times a day, once every minute when you're awake, and around 3 times per hour while sleeping. The average person has 10,000 taste buds. But as they get older, some taste buds are not replaced. An older person may have just 5,000 working buds, so they have to work harder or something. Eventually, human body hair may disappear. It used to protect us from severe weather conditions, but now we have clothes and umbrellas to do that. Most hair on the human body no longer serves any function. That's excluding our eyebrows and eyelashes, which protect our eyes from sweat and other nasty things dripping in. By the way, we're already halfway to losing all our hair. Humans used to be completely covered in it, which made us look as furry as gorillas. You have 5 million hair follicles on your body, and only 100,000 of them on your head. Hair grows half an inch every month, So, a 70-year-old person that never got a haircut would have hair as long as a telephone pole. There's a newly discovered type of brain cells crucial for visual search. They're called target cells. Without their help, you wouldn't be able to spot an acquaintance in a crowd or your dog in the park. Interestingly, target cells don't care what the thing you're searching for looks like. All they want to know is whether an object is your target or not. You have around 3 million sweat glands in your body. Many of them are on the soles of your feet and on your palms, forehead, armpits, and cheeks. You get red eyes in photos because when the camera flash goes off, your pupils don't have enough time to constrict. A large burst of light reaches your retina and it bounces back. Food doesn't need gravity to get to your stomach. Your muscles constrict and relax to push it down. But birds need gravity to swallow. Unlike most other animals, we're walking on 2 legs, so we needed extra protection for the head directly exposed to the sun. That's why we have head hair. It also helps us retain heat at night. Our brain may not be big compared to the rest of the body, but it's always active, which produces heat, so the head hair insulates that area. When you blink, you're giving your brain a chance to do a micro nap and recharge. You blink between 20 to 30,000 times a day, which means you walk around with closed eyes around 10% of your waking hours. Your hair knows when you sleep. There are genes that regulate your body clock, and they're placed in the cells of hair follicles. That means scientists can tell if you're a morning bird or a late owl studying your hair. Your nails grow faster today than before. Studies from the 50s and the 70s say nails were growing slower, almost a quarter. Scientists believe it's because we eat more proteins these days, or we're just not chewing them as much.
Most people are sure that humans only have 5 senses, but that's not entirely true. Taste, touch, smell, sight, and hearing aren't the only ones we have. Scientists claim that people have between 9 and 20 senses in total. These include thermoception, the sense of warmth, equilibrioception, the sense of balance. There's also the sense of time, although not everyone seems to have that last one. We used to think that there were just 8 different blood types, but in reality, there are over 30 known blood group systems. Here on the bright side, our favorite blood group is B positive. Get it? For every pound of fat you gain, you generate 1 mile of new blood vessels to supply oxygen and nutrients to your body. Your stomach produces a new lining every 6 days to avoid digesting itself. Nerve cells transmit 1,000 nerve impulses a second. They travel between 1 and 268 miles per hour. Our DNA contains 100,000 viruses. Scientists have discovered one that goes back 100 million years. Your body emits visible light. You're the brightest at 4 p.m., and your glow is the least visible at 10 a.m. Unfortunately, this glowing is 1,000 times less intense than what your eyes can see. Sweat is mostly water mixed with proteins, sugars, ammonia, and a lot of other stuff. It even contains tiny amounts of trace metals like copper, zinc, nickel, iron, and so on. What makes sweat taste salty is the sodium it contains. Plus, the more salt you eat, the saltier your sweat is. Your body's trying to get rid of the excess, and the fastest way is to sweat it out. If you walked 2 miles per hour, you'd have to walk for 20 hours straight to lose 1 pound. And it would take you 518 days and 8 hours to circle the equator. Earwax isn't actually wax. It contains fat, skin cells, sweat, and dirt. Your brain gets 3 times bigger over the first year of life and reaches its full maturity when you're 25. 60% of it is fat. Your brain generates around 23 watts of electrical power, which is enough to run a small light bulb. Humans can't really multitask. Your brain can't perform more than 1 action at the same time. It switches between them, which doesn't save time as you might think, but increases the possibility you'll do something wrong and makes the process longer. When you have an exam to take, or you're at work trying to focus on an important task, try chewing gum. Research showed it can help you stay concentrated for longer on tasks that require your full attention. Studies even say that it's a better test aid than caffeine. There's nothing special in the gum, but the act of chewing wakes your brain up. The effect doesn't last long though, just for 20 minutes. Embryos develop fingerprints at 3 months. Your bones are 4 times harder than concrete. The strongest bone in your body is the femur. It can support up to 30 times the weight of a grown-up person. Even crazier is that our bones are made up of composite material, meaning they're both hard and elastic at the same time. Sunburn is the result of radiation exposure. When your body's natural defense mechanism gets overwhelmed trying to fight UV rays, a toxic reaction occurs that results in sunburn. Goosebumps are an evolutionary reflex left over from our ancestors. The release of adrenaline made their hair stand up, and they look scarier to approaching predators. Your body produces 1 to 3 pints of saliva every day. It helps you digest food and fights off infections. You also have a lot of bacteria in your mouth. Yeah, that's right. The average amount of bacteria in a person's mouth is almost the same as the number of people living on Earth. That's hard to digest. Each human has roughly 150,000 hairs on their head. Every strand grows around 1/2 inch per month. If we added the growth from each hair, it would measure the distance of 10 miles in just 1 year. Your hair is also a lot stronger than you think. A single strand can hold 3 ounces, which is the weight of an apple. If we combined the strength of all the hair on your head, it could support the weight of 2 elephants. Hey, let's try it. The beating sound your heart makes is the clap of valve leaflets opening and closing. Your heart doesn't replicate its cells unless you have an injury. Your corneas are the only part of your body that don't get blood. They get oxygen directly through the air. When you're sitting or standing upright, it's easier for you to recall some positive memories that make you feel good. Some believe it's because sitting up with your back flat boosts blood flow and your brain gets more oxygen, which helps it function better. The man who has the deepest voice in the world, and that's definitely not me, can produce sounds that humans, including him, can't hear at all. But elephants can hear those sounds. Veins look blue because light has to go through layers of skin and fat to reach them. Your skin scatters a lot of the red portion of white light before it reflects the blood. This leaves only the blue light to bounce back to your eyes. A person who has anosmia is unable to detect smells. Phantosmia is the opposite condition, when someone smells an odor that isn't actually there. The human brain has 100 billion neurons. It's 73% water, and the same is true about the heart. That's why if your brain loses even 2% of its liquid, you start to feel tired. It also makes your memory worse, shortens your attention span, and puts a dampener on your mood. The earliest known person to have had blue eyes lived in the Stone Age, 7,000 years ago. Your right kidney is probably smaller and sits lower down than your left kidney to make room for your liver. By the way, your brain makes sure you don't drink too little or too much water. After you swallow some liquid, your mouth and throat start to fire signals to your brain, telling it to stop drinking. Otherwise, you'd keep gulping down water for the entire 10 to 60 minutes it takes the liquid to get to your cells. Your eyes can see something for a mere 13 milliseconds, and your brain will already process this image. The average blink lasts from 100 to 400 milliseconds. Even though the tongue isn't the strongest muscle in your body, it never gets tired. That's because of the way it's built. It's made up of 8 interwoven muscles. The tongue is the only muscle with ends not connected to bone. Other muscles join 2 bones at both ends because that's how we pull and make a motion. There are around 700 different species of bacteria in your mouth. Over 6 billion of them live there. Your skin is your largest organ. It can cover the surface area of 2 bath towels. It accounts for around 16% of body weight and is around 22 square feet. If you typed 60 words per minute for 8 hours a day, it would take you 50 years to type the human genome. You get tired pretty quickly when you're out in the heat. This happens because your body is trying really hard to keep itself cool, which puts a lot of extra work on it. So you get exhausted and tired, even if you don't do anything physically demanding. Your body has 78 organs, but only 5 of them are essential for survival: the brain, liver, kidney, lungs, and heart. Oh, the phone's ringing. Must be something urgent. At 11 p.m. Only all the gadgets in the house are silent. It's your ears that are ringing. You can also hear some hissing, whistling, buzzing, and even roaring. But all this noise doesn't have an external source. That's why it's known as phantom sounds. They can occur in one or both ears, constantly or from time to time. They're usually most noticeable at night, when nothing distracts you. Women have more taste buds on the surface of their tongues than men do. That's one of the reasons why 35% of ladies and only 15% of guys are super tasters. Those are people who feel flavors more strongly than others. Left-handed people usually prefer to chew on the left side, and right-handed people, well, you guessed it, chew on the right. Even if your fingerprints are damaged, they'll grow back in the same unique pattern. When breathing, a single lung only uses 5% of the oxygen you've inhaled. Your body actually glows. It emits a super faint light that's at its strongest at around 3 to 4 p.m. The sad news is that this glowing is 1,000 times less intense than what your eyes can see. Humans are the only animals that have chins. Even our closest genetic relatives, gorillas and chimps, lack this small piece of bone that extends forward from the jaw. Their lower jaws slant down and back from their front teeth. Scientists still haven't figured out this mystery. The opinions about why people are made this way differ. Some researchers think chins help us chew our food. Others are sure they have something to do with speaking. A few of us think it's simply a special place to grow a goatee. The most abundant element in the human body is oxygen at 65%, but it also contains lithium, cobalt, gold, and uranium. The rarest one of all is radium. On average, humans yawn 20 times a day, partially spontaneously, for example, when you're tired, but sometimes when someone yawns near you. Scientists think it could be a thing called social mirroring. Usually, when animals mimic each other, they recognize some action as useful, so they decide to do it too. With humans, it happens when someone crosses legs, laughs, smiles at you, or your stomach acid breaks down the foods you eat and turns them into easy-to-digest particles. It also stops nasty pathogens and microbes that could make you sick. In fact, your stomach acid is so strong that it can even dissolve bone and metal. Don't start munching down on your soda cans, though. That's probably not going to end well. Your brain has more than 86 billion nerve cells. They're all joined together by 100 trillion connections. That's even more than the number of stars in the Milky Way galaxy. There's a good chance you can guess someone's name based on how they look. Researchers showed portrait photos to a group of people, with 4 names written below. They were asked to choose the right name for this or that person. The law of chance says you'll guess it 25% of the time, but in this research, people got the names correct at a rate of 25 to 40%, and there were more than 94,000 faces shown. Let's say a man is called Bob. People will expect for him to have a rounder face than Tim. They expect Bob to be more jolly and ready to hang out with people. It has to affect his facial appearance in some way. A woman called Catherine can be considered more serious, studious, and concentrated. That could eventually influence her facial muscles as well. When ancient Romans flexed their biceps, they thought their muscles looked like mice. That's why the word muscle translates as little mouse in Latin. Your left lung is smaller than the right one because it shares space with your heart. Experts used to think that we can only distinguish 10,000 smells. In fact, a recent study found human beings can recognize 1 trillion smells. Millennials, or people born between 1981 and 1996, are more forgetful than older people. The main cause of their forgetfulness comes from higher levels of stress. So come on, dude, chill out, okay? Some scientists think that the purpose of fingerprints is a better grip, but others believe they're there to help wick water off them and allow the skin to stretch when needed to protect it from damage. There's also a theory saying that fingerprints improve the sense of touch. Hot coffee can taste better than cold coffee. Your taste bud receptors are most sensitive when your food is at or a little bit above room temperature. Hot coffee can then seem less bitter, because taste buds that detect bitterness are more sensitive when the coffee is cold. The biggest molecule in the human body is the chromosome 1. A human cell has 23 chromosome pairs, and each chromosome 1 is made of 10 billion atoms. You inhale 25 sextillion molecules in just one breath. That's 25 followed by 21 zeros. When you're walking faster, at some point, you'll feel the natural urge to start jogging. Your body wants to have a stable state, whether you're running or walking. So, if you're walking fast, it will unconsciously force you to start running. One theory is, we use more energy when walking faster than running. So that's one of the ways the body saves energy. Your pinky is a powerful little thing. Without it, your hand would lose a significant part of its power. Your index and middle fingers cooperate with your thumb to grab and pinch. And your pinky, together with your ring finger, provides grip strength. The fattiest organ in your body is your brain. Fat makes up at least 60% of its dry weight. This quality got the brain to the Guinness World Records. The organ contains around 25% of your body's cholesterol, which is vital for the brain's well-being. Your bones are 4 times harder than concrete. The strongest bone in your body is the femur. It can support up to 30 times the weight of a grown-up person. Even crazier is that our bones are made up of composite material, meaning they're both hard and elastic at the same time. Your fingernails grow twice as fast as your toenails. It would take 15.5 months for your toenails to grow 1 inch, but only 7 months for your fingernails to get this long. The outer layer of your skin is thicker on your feet than on other parts of your body. The heart has its own electrical system and can continue beating even when it's disconnected from the body. The vessels in your body are long enough to circle the earth twice or more. The idea that we use only 10% of our brains is a myth. At any given time, you use almost 100%. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to perform simple tasks, like drink a cup of coffee. More than 70% of your brain consists of water, and it needs 20% of your body's oxygen supply. The average lifespan of one eyebrow hair is 4 months. The body of a 110-pound person contains 40 tablespoons of salt. If you ironed out all the wrinkles in your brain and laid it flat, it would be the size of a pillowcase. The brain wrinkles as there's not a lot of room in the skull, so it folds over itself as it grows. By the way, don't do that pillowcase thing with your brain. Trust me on this one. We spend 40% of our life with our eyes closed. Most of that time is when we're asleep. But don't forget to count blinking too, or while driving. You produce around 85,000 pints of spit in your lifetime. That's enough saliva to fill around 500 bathtubs. Enough said. The highest blood flow isn't actually in your heart, and it's not in your brain either. It's in your kidneys. It's super hard for us to grasp just how small an atom is. But think of it this way. Your body is made up of a staggering 7 octillion atoms. Yeah, doesn't that look like a 7 being chased by a whole mob of zeros? For adults, the blood makes up 7 to 8% of the total body weight. About 55% of your blood is liquid plasma. The rest is red and white blood cells and platelets. They form clots and prevent bleeding. You can't swallow and breathe at the same time. The food you swallow and the air you breathe go down the same part of your throat at first. Only a bit deeper does the passage split into the esophagus, for food and liquid, and the trachea, for air. When you swallow, your airway gets automatically closed off. This prevents you from accidentally inhaling food. But occasionally, it still happens. There's a name for the growling sound that your stomach makes when you're hungry. It's called borborygmi. It takes 6 to 8 hours for food to travel through your stomach and small intestine. That's because your body is trying to absorb all its nutrients. The idea that the tongue has flavor zones is a myth. All taste buds can detect 5 tastes, but some receptors are more responsive than others. Human beings are the only animals that willingly delay sleep. Just make sure you get enough.
Okay, look at yourself in the mirror. Yeah, right in the eye. See that little fold of tissue in the inner corner of both of your eyes? Well, get ready for this. It was actually once a third eyelid or nictitating membrane. You can see it today in snakes or lizards, for example. The third eyelid was used for the same purpose as the other two, although it's unclear whether humans ever even had it fully grown. This membrane wasn't as thick as the two eyelids we have, and it could moisten the eye without obstructing the view. Right now, all we have left of it is this tiny fold in the corner of the eye, and most likely in the future we will lose it altogether. And maybe we'll finally stop waking up with that yucky crust that forms in our eyes overnight. Now, while you're still in front of the mirror, look lower. Lower, and lower still. Yeah, those are your toes. Say hello and goodbye. Scientists believe that, in some more or less distant future, we'll get rid of our toes completely. Our ancestors, the ancient primates, needed toes to climb trees more efficiently. They used both their hands and feet to grab tree branches. You can see it today in most monkeys and apes. They have longer and more flexible toes, along with flappier feet that allow them to get a hang on branches. Their feet mobility also lets them grab objects from the ground if necessary. For us humans, even lifting a pen we dropped on the floor with our toes is a complex task, but not for our primate relatives. Humans have evolved along a different route. We started walking upright and climbed down from trees, making rigid feet and shorter toes more of a necessity over time. Today, we still use our toes for balance when rolling from the balls of our feet to the tips of the toes, but our balance is now much more centered. It first moved towards our inner feet, which resulted in our pinky toes becoming so tiny, and the big toes, well, so big. As the balance moves away from the toes entirely, though, they're more likely to get fused together in the future. Now, turn around and look at your gorgeous behind. If you've ever fallen off a skateboard or slipped on an icy patch, you must remember what a terrible thing it is to hit that tailbone on a hard surface. Luckily for us, scientists predict it's going to go away pretty soon in the course of evolution. A tailbone is a feature that was left to us by our primate ancestors too. And yet again, they needed their tails to achieve more mobility among tree branches, using them to fling themselves from tree to tree. It's hard to say when humans dropped the tail to never pick it back up, but facts are facts. The only thing we have reminding us of those glorious tree-jumping days is the pretty useless bone at the lower end of our backs. Okay, back to the face now. Open your mouth and say, "Ah." If you're a lucky individual to have no wisdom teeth, then you can be proud knowing that you're a product of evolution going strong. As you might know, teeth are the only part of the human body that doesn't repair itself. So, if you lost all your teeth back in the dark times with no dentists around, the only choice you had was to eat liquid food. Not cool. Dentists believe that nature gave us wisdom teeth as a replacement for old, worn-out teeth we've had since childhood. That's why they grow so late in our lives. Today, though, with all the progress dentistry has gone through, we tend to keep all or most of our teeth intact until a very old age. And even if we lose some, we can always replace them with new ones. That makes wisdom teeth a vestigial thing. And they seem to understand that, since more and more people never have to go through the ordeal of teething as grown-ups. Speaking of teeth, our entire jaw has been changing for the past, 10,000 years, and is predicted to change even more quite soon. In fact, it's been the fastest changer of all our body parts. Back in the day, when early humans survived by hunting and gathering, they needed massive, powerful jaws and bigger teeth to chew through raw meat and grind plants. As they came to cooking and then farming, their food became less tough, and so their jaws became smaller to fit the current needs. As time went by, our jaws shrank more and more, and they're likely to continue doing so in the future. With lots of processed foods that don't need much chewing, humans of the future are probably going to have more delicate facial features with thin jaw lines and smooth cheekbones. Some body parts are not going away, but making a comeback instead. 100 years ago, fibula, a tiny bone in the back of the knee, was only present in around 11% of people, and scientists thought it would disappear entirely pretty soon. But, against all odds, the brave little bone has made it into the knees of a whopping 39% of modern people. It's still unknown why exactly the fibula returned, but the most popular opinion is that we've grown taller and heavier than our ancestors. That much is true. As our diet became better and more nutritious, we learned to live longer and grow taller. We're now probably at the peak of our evolutionary height. And the fibula might have appeared in our bodies to provide a smooth surface for the tendon behind the knee to slide on, reducing friction and lowering the chances of damage because of wear and tear. Speaking of becoming bigger, let's get you back to that mirror, shall we? Flex a little bit. Ooh, nice biceps there. But unfortunately, not as nice as your ancient ancestors were. Not everything about evolution is 100% good for us. It's just a set of features that adapted best. And that's the case with our muscles. They've grown smaller and weaker with time, especially in our upper bodies. In ancient times, humans needed big and strong muscles to do a lot of handiwork. From hunting and schlepping their catch home to crafting tools and building shelters. Later, it didn't grow easier. Much the opposite. In fact, plowing fields and building complex structures required a lot of physical strength and endurance. But as the technological progress started booming, physical capabilities gave way to brain power. And machines began doing a lot of work for us, most of it even better than us. We shifted more towards sedentary lifestyle, spending more and more time in front of computers. And our muscles have been growing steadily smaller, because we simply don't need them as much anymore. It's highly likely that as the progress goes further, we'll become much slenderer and have more trouble gaining muscle mass. Our brain is of particular interest because it's been changing in a kind of a strange pattern. Our distant ancestors had a rather small brain at first, but the close relatives of humans, the Neanderthals, obtained a larger brain than the average modern human has. In the course of evolution, human brain grew larger. But in the more recent centuries, it started shrinking, and no one knows exactly why. Some experts say it might have to do with the change of our lifestyle and social connections. Early humans, especially hunter-gatherers, had to remember every plant and animal they saw, their properties, and how to use this or that thing. They were more generalist, having to learn everything their parents knew and find out more on their own. The modern human is more specialized in a certain area, delving deeper into some narrow subject while relying on their peers for the rest. Where ancient humans worked in groups in which anyone could potentially replace anyone else, we gather in teams, where each member has their own specific task and is irreplaceable. Still, brain size doesn't seem to matter that much, because orcas and elephants, for example, have bigger brains than us, which doesn't make them more intelligent. Happier? I'm guessing yes. And if we venture further into the unknown, meaning millennia from today, we might even develop some pretty unbelievable traits. Some go as far as to say that if the tendency for the sea levels to rise persists, humans might adapt to living in water. We might evolve to have webbed hands and feet to swim better, and develop gills to be able to breathe underwater. Or, if we go into space and start colonizing other planets, we will inevitably have to adapt to their conditions. Mars, for instance, has lower gravity and a much colder climate. It will probably make humans taller and lighter, but also may cause them to grow much more body hair to keep warm. And planets with stronger gravity and higher temperatures will, on the contrary, turn humans into stocky, sturdy, and likely hairless creatures. The possibilities are endless. Hey, maybe due to social media, we'll just turn into little blobs with big eyes and thumbs and not much else. So much better for texting. Hope not. That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the